Jim Shannon to move the motion.
That this House considers the impact of VAT on independent faith-based schools. First of all, can I say, sorry, it's a real pleasure to serve under your chairship, and I hope that the debate will go well. I welcome the Minister in place, and I look forward to engagement. I'll give a copy of, you have it there, the speech, and I think the last 2 pages are my asks in relation to it. I thank the Lib Dem spokesperson here, and obviously the Honourable Lady and the Shadow spokesperson. I think this has been elevated to for this afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be allowed to move this issue this afternoon, and this is certainly not the first time that we have discussed this move by government since the announcement when they came into power. Just for the record, Sir Alec, I want to mention that we have some people in the gallery today. Dr. Gary John Barnes, he's the new CEO of Christian Schools Trust. We have Steve Bagoo, he's the Head of Education for Christian Concern, and we have 3 people who are 3 staff and parents of a small Christian school in Reading, which is having to close because of the VAT and the B or policy. So I want to recognise that they're here today in the gallery, and they're here for the purpose of this debate, and they're one of the instigators for me to be here to also contribute in this debate on their behalf, and indeed on behalf of many, many others. I'll outline sort of like who they are as I progress through this debate today. Also, just for the record, my PPS is here, and that's a lady in the corner who writes all the speeches. I think people are saying, my goodness, she's overworked, and she probably is. But there you are. But I just want to, she's here, she's not often here, but she's here today, and I want to say a big thank you to her as well. I must say that whilst my sons and grandchildren have all went through the public school system and they've excelled in their own rights, I have met with so many people who made the difficult decision to pay towards their children's education, not because they could afford to do so, but because their personal faith was at odds with the many moves away from moral values and ethics that they cherish. That's their motivation. That's the reason why we're having a debate today, and I thank the Backbench Committee for giving us a chance to contribute to this debate. The idea that independent schools are for the ultra-wealthy is simply not true, Sir Alec. And it's for those people that I move this motion today. It's for my constituents from Strangford who attend the Bangor Independent Christian School in neighbouring constituency of North Down. It's for international students attending Rockport in outside Belfast, or Hollywood Rudolph Steiner schools, for those who are attending Jewish schools or Muslim schools. I don't need to agree with the theology, Sir Alec, but to agree that their parents should have a school choice which reflects treasured essential values. I've been in touch with the independent schools, the ISC, which represents a total of around 1,400 schools across the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And that equates to some roughly 80% of all UK pupils attending fee-paying schools. According to the ISC's most recent annual census, 663 of the schools in the ISC's membership have a religious affiliation or ethos, meaning that around 47% of the schools ISC represents are faith schools. This reflects my belief in the need to ensure that government looks past the view of rich parents and understands the bigger faith picture. And that faith picture is what I hope today, Sir Alec, to be able to focus on, and hope that those who participate can also focus on. Overall, around some 370,000 pupils attend an independent school in England, across England, that have an identified religious ethos, which equates to some 60% of all pupils at an independent school. So it's not a small figure, it's a large figure. It can't be ignored, I would say, respectfully, and we do need to address that issue. And while the majority of these schools have a form of Christian denomination, the independent sector also provides essential provision to minority faiths. For example, I was talking to the member for Birmingham West today. To correct that, Ayub Khan, forgive me for saying his name, but I think it's Birmingham West, but if it's not, maybe it can be corrected for me. He also wished to be here today, but unfortunately he has an event at 5 o'clock, and it's pretty tight for him to get by this debate and then get back to Birmingham. I think he's maybe opening somewhere in Birmingham today. For example, around 20,000 pupils attend Islamic faith schools. The importance of faith schools is incredibly clear. While all schools must follow the Equality Act and welcome every pupil, issues around curriculum, diet and religious holidays would make it difficult for some more religiously observant pupils to be accommodated in mainstream schools. Therefore, many independent faith schools provide access to education in a religious context which isn't always possible in the state sector, and that can be Muslim, Jewish or Christian. Fees at many independent faith schools are less than the state pays per pupil, the circa price of £8,000. And in some cases, community fundraising efforts and supports those who are less able to pay for education. For example, the average annual fee for Islamic schools in ISC is around £3,000 per year. Chinook UK is an organisation which represents some 20,000 Charedi Orthodox Jewish pupils attending 65 schools across the United Kingdom. On average, these schools typically ask for a voluntary contribution of less than £100 per week. The Christian Schools Trust, the CST, represents 25 schools charging between £3,000 and £8,000 per year in fees, often with high levels of bursary provision. So that gives a bit of background factually, financially, where the case is. The ISC has been tracking the impact of VAT on the sector as a whole. And while it may take a few years for the full impact to be seen, it is clear that there's been an initial impact, and that's been very clear. The opposition to the VAT on independent schools and independent faith schools in particular has been an aggravating factor for the parents back home in my constituency who attend the independent faith school in Bangor. They're not rich people, certainly. They're working people who skimp and save to put the money aside so that they can ensure that they'll be in a position to give the education, the faith education that they wish to do in relation to their children. While it might take a few years for the full impact to be seen, it's clear that there's been an initial impact. While the data cannot be broken down to measure the impact of VAT on faith schools specifically, case studies make clear that the impact has been felt strongly. The Treasury Impact Assessment of VAT said, and I quote this for the record as their comment, pupil movement from the independent to the state sector, a greater degree of impact may be felt by faith school pupils if they cannot be placed in an alternative school with the same religious denomination. So by doing, and I say respectively to govern by the policy that they have moved, they have in a way disaffected or discriminated against those who may have and probably do have from independent schools a religious denomination that they wish to adhere and stay with. The result has been that 110 independent schools have closed since the general election in July 2024. 10 of these schools have been involved in mergers. This has impacted around 9,500 students, including almost 2,500 with SEND. New independent schools which have opened are predominantly SEND schools, while those closing are mostly mainstream schools. Overall, we are seeing a net loss of mainstream provision. And while some of those new independent schools setting up are specifically looking after SEND, special needs, educational needs children, it does mean that there are a great many others who have been disaffected and have nowhere for their faith and educational and religious viewpoint to be retained. For schools that remain open, there has been a 25,000 drop, or a 5.2% in the number of students since 2023. That's according to the ISC's September pupil numbers survey. And September 2025 pupil numbers survey showed a fall in pupil numbers by 17,000, or 3.6% in the last academic year alone. Again, unfortunately, stats that show the impact of what's happening in relation to where we are today. To have the VAT on the independent faith schools, I think, unfortunately, puts many at a disadvantage. It is also notable, Sir Alec, the September pupil numbers survey continued to show a larger fall in intake years, with reception and Year 7 numbers down closer to 5% in the last academic year. And whilst there may be debate on the extent to which VAT has impacted pupil numbers, the fall is out of step with the normal trend of our pupil surveys and confirms the decline in numbers seen in the DFE and the ISC census published in spring 2025. So there is a trend that has happened directly because of the VAT on independent schools, and it does put them at a disadvantage and disaffected, and does confirm the decline, and that can't be ignored either. So what was portrayed, Sir Alec, as a tax on the rich has instead turned out to be a tax on those with a strong faith. And as chair of the APPG of freedom of religious belief, I cannot highlight, and no one would expect me to do, highlight religious freedom in other countries where there is a shortfall, and not highlight a decision in this country, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, which is impacting educationally for those of a strong faith, where it's a Christian faith, whether it's a Muslim faith, or indeed whether it's a Jewish faith. And my job as the chair of the APPG is to do that, and do it in a way that hopefully can come over well and strongly, and show the effect that it's having. The decision to apply VAT to independent school fees was projected to raise some 1.5 billion annually. And whilst raising revenue is important, and it's critical, we have to raise, government must raise revenue to pay the bills and pay for the services that they're doing, and nobody denies that. But we must ensure that the policy is proportionate and does not unintentionally harm those that it was never meant to target. And I don't doubt that government didn't set out to affect the changes that are happening very clearly in the independent faith-based schools. The debate is not about, never about, elite institutions charging some £30,000 a year for fees. It's not about that. I'm talking about, I give the examples of the young people from my parents and young people from my constituency who travel to the Bangor Independent Faith School, who aren't rich, who skimp and save, don't take their holidays. They put their money aside so that their child can have an education in a faith-based school that hopefully can be of benefit to them. It's about the low-fee independent faith schools, many charging under £4,000 annually. It's serving modest income families in Jewish, in Muslim and Christian communities. And for these families, faith-based education is not a luxury. It's a deeply held necessity. In many areas, there is no equivalent provision in the state sector that reflects their religious ethos. And I want to protect, and I know that others in this debate today, Sir Alec, and including yourself and some of the comments that you've made in the chamber as well, you want to protect, as the member, on behalf of your constituents, protect the religious ethos as well. The Independent Schools Council has proposed a simple and fair solution, and this is my request to the Minister, by the way. It's in page 6 and 7 in relation to what we're asking for. I'm very conscious that we're asking for something which the Minister can't confirm that the Minister can do, and I understand that, but my request to the Minister will be that the Minister would give this to the Treasury Minister responsible, ask them to look at the comments put forward and some of the solutions, which I believe might be helpful. I always try to be constructive, Sir Alec, you know that. That's what I try to do in any debates I'm in this House, and I ask for that as well. So they have proposed, the Independent Schools Council has proposed a simple and fair solution. Introduce a VAT registration threshold for independent schools, charging below the state funding benchmark of £7,690 per pupil. If that could be considered and looked at, I think perhaps maybe that might be a step in the right direction, and one that I believe would be enable the small faith independent schools to be able to move forward in a positive fashion. It's not a novel concept, Sir Alec. The VAT system already includes thresholds to protect smaller entities from disproportionate burdens, and over half of UK businesses operate below the VAT registration threshold. So there's an example of it working. I think it's an example of how it can be done, and my request again to the Minister to refer that to the correct person and correct department to ensure that that could be done. Under this proposal, that's a proposal of the VAT system, only around 270 schools, roughly 10% of independent schools would qualify. But it wouldn't make a difference, because it would enable those smaller schools to survive and come out the other side. And about 54,000 pupils would benefit. Again, a very direct number of pupils that would get the advantage. And the estimated VAT revenue loss would be 32 million, and that's just 2% of the projected 1.5 billion. That was originally the figure that the department would get from the fees, from school fees, by putting VAT on independent school fees as well. However, if even a small percentage of these pupils transfer into the state sector, the cost to the Treasury rises sharply. So there is a negative. If there's no independent faith schools, then they have to go into the mainstream, and they go into the mainstream, the cost factor rises. And if all were absorbed in their entirety, it would cost over £415 million annually, before accounting for infrastructure expansion. So in fiscal terms, the exemption is modest. In social terms, it is significant. This threshold would protect low-income families, would preserve community-based education, would maintain educational diversity, and would avoid unnecessary pressure on the state system. Those are some of the benefits that could be derived from it if we could move towards the VAT registration threshold of 7,690 per pupil. It enables all these things to happen. It enables a percentage of the independent schools would qualify, the faith schools. It would enable 54,000 pupils to benefit, and it wouldn't put the pressure on the educational system, which quite clearly it would, to do nothing. Implementation would be, in my opinion, Sir Alec, and in the opinion of some of the experts and some of the people who are in the audience today, would be straightforward. School fees are publicly available. Ofsted already inspects fee policies, and anti-avoidance safeguards are in place. So this is not about special treatment. It's not about asking for something that nobody else should get. It's enabling people to have their faith, whether they be Christian, Muslim or Jews, that they can have their children educated at that level in the schools as they so wish, and for them not to cost them the earth. It's about proportionality. It's about fairness. I'll be to you.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for giving way, and I appreciate the solution he's presenting for faith-based schools. But would he accept that, in fact, any tax on education is wrong in principle? And would he support the policy of my party of reversing the burden of VAT on all independent schools?
I thank him for that intervention. The debate quite clearly is on VAT and independent faith-based schools, and that's what the debate's about. But I do support, and indeed I've voted accordingly in the Chamber, and they can be recorded as such. But I am putting forward the case today for the faith-based independent schools, and asking for them to be considered differently. But I do accept very much what the Honourable Gentleman has said. It would be about the proportionality, about the fairness, about protecting vulnerable communities from unintended harm. I'm clear in my mind, Sir Alec, that the government may not have accepted or understood the harm that would come across, and there is a way of preventing that to happen. So I put forward that suggestion to the Minister, and I believe that we can meet our fiscal objectives without undermining access to faith-based education for families of modest means. That's mine. Those are the people that I know, Sir Alec. Those are the people from my constituency who send their children to independent faith schools. Those are the people who have asked me to bring forward this debate. People here in the audience today are those who represent some 1,400 schools across the United Kingdom. We speak for those with a Christian faith, and those with a Muslim faith, and those with a Jewish faith, and I make that quite clear. My ask, I would urge the Minister and the Government to consider a targeted VAT threshold that reflects both economic realism, and I think that's what we want to try and do, and also social responsibility. And I'm very pleased to see the Minister in place. She knows that this has been the second time this week, I think, the Honourable Lady has come to Westminster Hall. And I look very much to her, respectively and graciously, to enable those conversations within Cabinet. And can I say this, Sir Alec, to right the wrong that has been done. Thank you.
That this House has considered the impact of VAT on independent faith schools. Ian Sollum.
Thank you, Sir Alec. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship today, and I'd also like to thank the member for Strangford for bringing forward this debate. Now, it's well established that the Liberal Democrats oppose taxing education, whether that is independent faith or non-faith schools. We did not support the government's decision to end the VAT exemption on independent schools, or treating those schools differently to other independent education providers for VAT purposes. Neither did we support the government's policy to remove private schools' charitable business rates relief of 80% for those that are charities. And while our position applies equally to all independent schools, I would like to acknowledge that for many parents, choosing a faith school is not primarily a financial calculation. It is an expression of deeply held conviction about how their children should be raised, about community and belief. The government should be mindful of how this policy bears on those for whom a faith education is not a luxury, but a matter of conscience. It must be the choice of parents to decide where their children are educated. We understand that there are many reasons for the choices parents make, and it is their right to make these choices without being subject to further taxes. I've heard from several of my constituents on this issue, and none of them wealthy, but all of them working hard and wanting to do the very best for their children. Some, alongside many others across the country, have struggled to find a local state secondary school place for their child and been offered one many miles away, and that's meant that they've had to resort to private school whilst they sit on long waiting lists for places that will never become available, leaving them with considerable financial pressures. Many other parents have been failed by the school their children attended, which have not provided the support they need, and they have been forced to move them to the private sector, again at considerable cost. This has not been a choice, but something they feel forced upon them because of issues with the current school system. But any parent making this choice for whatever reason certainly should not be penalised with more taxes. It must be noted as well that parents of children with special educational needs and disabilities often turn to independent schools because support is not available in local state schools. Independent schools currently educate over 100,000 children with SEND. That number tells its own story. Sir Alec, in the last year alone, it is reported that 100 independent schools have closed their doors, and it is predicted that a further 26 will follow this year. A small number of these were part of the natural churn, but the majority were not. They include primary, secondary, sixth form colleges and special educational needs schools. And the Liberal Democrats remain concerned that these ongoing closures will have a knock-on effect in some areas of the country, which will see an increase in pupils applying and entering the state school system. In Kent, for example, nearly 100 state school inquiries were made in just 48 hours after the independent Bishop Challoner School announced its closure. We know the state school system is already struggling with large class sizes, declining teacher numbers and increasing numbers of pupils with SEND. The government cannot expect the state sectors to simply absorb the pressures these increased numbers will bring. However, the Liberal Democrats do believe that independent schools benefiting from VAT exemptions should give back to their local communities. And indeed, many already do through shared facilities, joint programmes with genuine partnerships and with neighbouring state schools. We would want to see this best practice become universal, with investment proportional to school size and fees, and schools expected to demonstrate their contribution through the inspection process. Faith schools in particular often have a strong tradition of community service that goes well beyond the school gates, and we should recognise that and see it built upon. But to conclude, Sir Alec, the government must look seriously at the negative impact of VAT on faith and non-faith independent schools, the impact on the state sector, and the very real financial burden on families who have already paid tax into the system. And I look forward to hearing from the Minister how the government intends to address the concerns expressed today. Thank you.
Official officer and spokesman, John Morrissey.
Thank you, Sir Alec. And it is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And this is an area that is very close to my heart. And I am very grateful for the Honourable Gentleman for bringing it forward today, because it is something that I see for my constituents. It's something that the Conservatives very much care about, because it goes to the fundamental values of, do you believe that people should have individual choice, parental choice for where they send their child to school, or should the state control everything? And this feels like a very vindictive tax that is there to punish those that want to have choice in religion, choice in education, and want to maybe have an aspirational view of where they send their child. And this tax doesn't punish the wealthy. This tax punishes those who are working to barely get by, who are saving, as my honourable friend referred to, saving, not going on holidays, not, sacrificing everything to send their child to the religious school, the faith school that they choose, whether it be because of their religious belief or because that school offers additional SEND provision that they can't get in the mainstream school. I know parents that have sent their child to a school that isn't of their faith, but they're sending them there because it is the only alternative to bullying, to things and challenges that their child is having in school. So these schools have been a lifeline for so many parents. And to see, and I've seen it, Sir Alec, I've seen parents come to me with tears in their eyes, and they say that they can no longer send their child to the school that is best for them because now the state has said they don't deserve to go to that school because they don't have enough money to pay for the extra tax. And it is a vindictive tax. Even we're the only European country that is taxing education. How can that be right? And what this does is it limits choice. And I believe in personal choice. I believe in competition. I believe in letting people make their own decisions on where they send their child to school. And this restricts that. This means that more children will be flooding into the state sector. More children will be competing for SEND places. More children will not, if they're being sent to a faith school, for those reasons, will not be able to actually find another school, oftentimes of that same denomination, and be able to practice their same faith in a school. And this is something that the Conservatives have pledged to reverse, and I'm very, very glad that they are going to do so, because I don't think we are a country that wants to limit personal religious freedom and personal choice and parental aspiration, because the state does not always know best. When your child has autism, when your child is being bullied, when your child, maybe is not getting the faith education that you feel that they need in the state sector, that is why independent faith schools exist, so that your child, if it is your choice to sacrifice your income and other comforts to send your child to that school, it should be your choice. And we as Conservatives believe that that should be scrapped, and we will continue to advocate for that. So in conclusion, because I know everyone has many fun and eventful things to do today, I will conclude, Chair, but I just want to thank you again for bringing this to the House, because it is important that we do not forget in the next few years this impact, and that sacrifice is no longer enough for people who desperately want to educate their children in a way that we took for granted 20 years ago, that we took for granted that our child could be raised in the Jewish faith, in Islam, in any... is there a time limit?
No, but you should be addressing the Chair.
I'm sorry, you're right. I'm sorry, Chair. And this is something we have to continue, Chair, to raise throughout our time in Parliament until the next general election. We cannot forget that this should not stand and that we need to reverse this piece of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sir Alec. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship today. And I thank all honourable members for attending today's debate, and particularly thank the Honourable Member for Strangford for securing this discussion and for his characteristically engaging speech. And I'm grateful for the suggestions that he has made to me today, which have all been noted. May I also congratulate his staff member, who is in the corner of the room today, for her superhuman efforts. The volume of the wonderful speeches that you produce, I do congratulate you, and it's great that the Honourable Member for Strangford was able to do so as well. And may I also say to the Honourable Member for Beaconsfield, whilst I perhaps didn't agree with the content of her speech, I do admire the speed with which she assembled it here today. Sir Alec, education matters. It sits at the very heart of this government's mission to break down barriers to opportunity, ensuring that every child, wherever they live and whatever their background, has the best possible start in life and access to a high-quality education. Our priority is clear: to raise school standards for every child. And I believe this is a priority shared by colleagues across the House, as is clear from the speeches today. This government values the contribution that faith schools make to our diverse education system. Faith schools, whether private or state-funded, have long played and continue to play a really vital role. We continue to work closely with faith school providers, representative organisations and local authorities to find ways to support private faith schools. This government respects parental choice, and faith schools in the private and state sector will remain a part of that choice. But the truth is, Sir Alec, that we inherited a dire fiscal situation from the party opposite, and families, including those in faith communities, were dealing with sky-high interest rates, underfunded public services and a broken NHS. That is why we have taken some fair and necessary decisions on tax, decisions that will stabilise public finances and secure the additional funding required to deliver on our commitments to education and young people. The measure we're discussing today will raise essential revenue that will be invested in our public services, such as our £1.7 billion increase to the core schools budget in 26-27, taking core school funding to £67 billion compared to £65.3 billion in 25-26. The government carefully considered a range of representations made by faith schools, including a proposal for a low-fee carve-out. However, the government concluded that, in line with the principles of protecting revenue and fairness, faith schools should remain in the scope of the VAT policy. We understand that some parents make the decision to send their child to a private school because of its particular faith ethos and because they feel that particular type of school is better able to meet their child's needs than their place in the state sector. It is, though, the case that all children of compulsory school age are entitled to a state-funded school place should they require one. And of all the faith schools in England, around 1/3 of them are state-funded schools. We are also supporting faith groups with their engagement with local authorities to explore options for those private faith schools who are interested in joining the state-funded sector. Where there is a sustainable need, local authorities can bring schools serving particular faith communities into the state sector as voluntary aided schools, and the school must meet all required standards within the state-funded sector. Since the introduction of the VAT policy, we are aware of one private faith school that has joined the state sector as a voluntary, aided, maintained faith school opening in September 25. Furthermore, not all income received by smaller faith schools will be subject to VAT. Some faith schools are likely to be less impacted by changes to private schools' tax, where some of their income is derived from other sources, such as voluntary donations or support from religious organisations. This is because VAT is out of scope for donations that are freely given and where there is no reciprocal obligation. That means some private faith schools may be affected proportionately less than others. All private schools, including private faith schools, can decide for themselves how to manage the additional cost of VAT. And there are a variety of ways, Sir Alec, in which a school may choose to do this. For example, they may reduce their surpluses or reserves, make savings on non-essential expenditure, or, like any VAT-registered organisation, reclaim input VAT on their costs. I'll give way briefly to my good friend.
Respectfully, it's not about how the schools themselves can do things. It's the parents who give that sacrifice so much so that they can get to the schools. I had suggested, and the Minister has it in front of her, the idea of looking at a simple solution, and that was to introduce the VAT registration threshold below the state funding benchmark. I know the Minister doesn't have the final say in that, and I understand that. But my request, number one request, Sir Alec, would be that the Honourable Lady could do that to the relevant Minister and ask them, would they consider reviewing and looking at this as a possibility of finding a solution. I think I give the figures as well, if you don't mind me saying, give the figures as well for the savings and the costs, and if everybody was to go to state schools, it would cost even more. I'm sorry, Sir Alec, but that's the point I'm trying to make. Sorry, excuse me.
I'm grateful to him, and he made his case well in his speech earlier today and makes it again now. And I would say to him that the government has carefully considered the options that he's put forward today, but I've heard all of the points that he's made, and they've been noted by my officials. So all private schools, Sir Alec, including private faith schools, can decide for themselves how to manage the additional cost of VAT. There are a variety of ways in which a school may choose to do this. For example, they may reduce their surpluses or reserves, make savings, or reclaiming input on their costs. And private schools have steadily increased average fees by 75% in real terms since 2000, and this has not affected pupil numbers. Fee increases can also reflect wider cost pressures beyond just VAT. And business rates. The government is closely monitoring the impact of the VAT policy on the private school sector, and we remain confident in the estimates made when this policy was introduced. That is, that the number of private school closures was expected to remain relatively low and influenced by various factors, not just by the VAT policy. On average, 74 private schools, including independent special schools, have closed per year over the last 20 years. However, only 60 private schools closed in academic year 24-25, the school year that the VAT changes were introduced. This means school closures announced thus far do remain firmly within historical patterns and sit comfortably within our expectations. Indeed, even after the VAT policy came into effect, private schools have continued to open in England in the same time period, between the 1st of September 24 and the 31st of August 25. 106 private schools have registered and opened. Sir Alec, we are confident that the state sector can accommodate any additional pupils, including any pupils transferring from private state schools. I will give way.
Sir Ashley Fox.
I'm grateful to the Minister for giving way. The justification for this tax given in the Labour Party manifesto was to raise revenue to employ more teachers in the state sector. Yet we now know that in November 25 there were 1,400 fewer teachers than 12 months previously. So could the Minister tell us where the money's gone?
I will, and I'm just coming on to that, if he would bear with me in my speech, but I'm grateful to him for that. What did I do something wrong? Sir Alec, I do apologise.
It's crept into a couple of speeches today. I am not responsible for any decisions, so please let's not use the word you. It's not just you, it's crept in with a couple of people, so it's a timely reminder that we don't use the word you.
It's a very timely reminder. I'm grateful to you, Sir Alec. But I do thank him for his intervention, which is a very important point. And as I've just skipped through my notes, I realise I will not be coming onto it. I have, in fact, I think already covered it. So I will just repeat that we are managing to increase the school's budget significantly as a consequence of this policy, which has also raised actually significantly more than our initial estimates. And also, of course, we are driving towards recruiting the teachers. Again, more detail of which was published in our school's white paper plans earlier this week. So, Sir Alec, in drawing to a close, I once again thank the Honourable Member for Strangford for securing this debate and members from across the House for their contributions this afternoon. As members have eloquently put in their speeches today, independent schools, including faith schools, make a valuable contribution to our diverse education system. This government has made necessary and fair choices to safeguard the public finances, invest in our public services, and increase funding for our schools. We will keep working with faith groups, school leaders and local authorities to ensure that every child in this country has access to a high-quality education. And I thank you, Sir Alec.
Jim Shannon to wind up.
So, first of all, can I thank Backbench Committee for the opportunity to speak on this issue, and thank all of the honourable members for their contribution. The honourable member for I'm sure I'll get this all pronounced. It's Newts and Mid-Cambridgeshire, is that correct?
Close enough.
Yeah, okay, close enough to not make a difference. Can I thank him for the honourable gentleman for his contribution? And the Lib Dems party policy on this is quite clear. I knew it was before I came here, as I knew it was with the Conservative Party as well. The debate focused upon faith-based schools, and it's very important that we look at a sector which I believe are feeling the pain more than most, and because of. And I do feel that their solution that they put forward would be a solution that should be looked at and prevailed upon, if at all possible. The honourable gentleman referred to 100 independent schools closed in the last year, and perhaps maybe as many as 26 in the year to come. And his last word was that government should look seriously at the financial burdens on schools. Honourable gentleman for Bridgewater in his intervention was very clear that he perceived, and I would believe it to be so, an attack on education, and choice of education was, I think, was the words that the honourable gentleman referred to. And again, whenever the vote specifically on independent schools was happening, I was very clear where my votes lie, and I lay with the honourable gentleman and his party and what they put forward. The Honourable Lady for Shadow Minister from Beaconsfield, can I thank her for her passionate contribution, and the Honourable Lady, as she said in the Chamber before, and she reaffirmed that today, she had many parents and many on behalf of their children who want they want their choice to the school that they should attend, and also in my comments earlier on I referred to 4 freedom of religious belief issues, and I believe what we see today, unfortunately, in the United Kingdom is an attack upon those with faith based, whether they be Christians, Muslims, or indeed Jews, and that's the issue. And she also said, don't forget the sacrifice by parents for their children, and to reverse this policy. Can I thank the Honourable Lady, the Minister as well. She outlined very clearly the commitment from government in relation to education and how the financial budget is and the focus and the problems and the SEND issues, special education needs, which are massive, no matter whether it be here in England or whether it be in Northern Ireland or wherever it may be. She also, I again would say, with great respect, I know the Honourable Lady, I think, told me that she had considered, or government had considered, the VAT registration. If the figures that we presented today, Sir Alec, indicate that with the threshold being set at the funding benchmark of 7,690 per pupil, and the fact that all the independent schools were closed and they're all to go into the mainstream, the mainstream couldn't cope. I think the figures indicate that some 270 schools would qualify, 54,000 pupils would benefit, and the revenue loss would be reduced down from the 1.5 billion down to 32 million. I think those figures indicate perhaps an opportunity to review that. And I say respectively to the Minister, it's never my form to attack anyone. not my form to run anybody down. That's not how I do things. I always try to put forward a solution-based idea, and I think today we've introduced that for the independent faith schools. I thank the Minister, thank everyone for their contribution, thank Hansard for their for all the writing they do. I know we all keep them busy, but thank you very much. Thank you.
The question is that this House has considered the impact of VAT on independent faith schools. Some of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order. The sitting stands adjourned.